California Democratic Congressman Mike Levin joins me now. Congressman, always good to see you. Your reaction to the news today about the federal employee firings, do you believe they're real? Do you believe they're a scare tactic? How are you evaluating that?
Well, good to be with you, Major. Look, I think that Russ Vought is completely out of control, the budget director, and any sort of wide-scale firings are illegal and unconstitutional. Now, I thought it was very interesting in your open, something that I had not heard or seen reported elsewhere, is they're going to try to adhere to a 60-day time period before doing any of that. That answers one question, because clearly the civil service laws would require a 60-day notice and, frankly, a lot of other things be followed that this administration seems to have no desire to do. That being said, it is the Congress of the United States that makes the decisions which agencies are funded. We're supposed to work as appropriators. I'm a member of the Appropriations Committee under Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the Constitution to actually fund the federal government. It is not up to the president and definitely not up to the director of the budget office to make those decisions about how money is spent. What happens during a shutdown is the president, the executive, can determine who is essential and who is non-essential. If they're essential, they have to stay on the job without pay. If they're non-essential, they're furloughed. But in any event, they are not fired. So I see this as another threat, another attempt at intimidation, just as I saw the president say, well, we're only going to go after Democratic policy priorities or Democratic programs. Look, here's the deal. If we don't come to some sort of resolution by the middle of next week, we're going to have military go without pay. And that ought to be something that Mike Johnson and John Thune and Donald Trump all feel personally responsible for, because they control the levers of government. And Mike Johnson, if he had any backbone whatsoever, would call us into Washington next week before the 15th to vote on a bill that 150 plus of us in the House on a bipartisan basis have supported, which says very simply, Major, pay our troops. Don't allow our troops to become a bargaining chip or part of some sort of political leverage during a shutdown. It's flat out wrong. I represent, as you know, Major, here in San Diego, tens of thousands of Marines and sailors just in my district. We got to make sure they're paid.
So just for my audience's benefit, Congressman, the clerk of the House announced late this afternoon that the House will not be in session next week. There'll be no votes. There's nothing going on. So that thing you just described is not going to happen unless there's a forcing mechanism. How are you going to force it?
I wish I knew, Major. Mike Johnson seems to only care about one person, and that's Donald Trump. You know, Johnson wants to avoid the same fate that Kevin McCarthy experienced a few years ago, and that's really been Mike Johnson's biggest achievement, is not getting fired for a couple years. And look, he's not bringing us back during the middle of a government shutdown when members of the military aren't going to receive their pay, because he doesn't want to swear in the newly elected Adelita Grijalva from Tucson, Arizona. Adelita Grijalva, the daughter of my dear friend Raul Grijalva, who I served with for many years, was duly elected by the people of Arizona, and they know that if she's sworn in, that she will immediately sign on to the bipartisan discharge petition, which will compel the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files. So once again, Mike Johnson puts Donald Trump's interests and wishes above all else. And I hope that Mike Johnson at some point would realize that his constituents in Louisiana, they're going to suffer the consequences if we can't come to an agreement on health care. The same with John Thune's constituents in South Dakota. They're going to suffer the consequences. And for them to say, well, we'll fix it later, we'll figure it out later, we have to figure it out now. People are getting the letters right now, Major, that their premiums are going to double next year or more. And unless we fix it, open enrollment is November. People have to pay the first bills in December. So we fix it now, or it's not going to get fixed, and millions are going to get priced out of health care. It's just unconscionable.
Congressman, before I let you go, the Speaker has said over and over again, the House has done its work to pay U.S. military personnel by passing a clean continuing resolution. It does not need to consider this matter anymore. It needs the Senate to pass that so the military members can get paid. How do you respond?
I say it's laughable, and he knows that it's laughable because what they did is pass a partisan funding bill that had every Republican, I think, except for one, and had, I think, one Democrat or two Democrats on the bill. So it was a totally partisan endeavor. He knew that we wanted to negotiate around health care. We wanted to extend the tax credits for those Americans who are at risk of losing their care. And he knew that we wanted some assurance, given all the tricks that the administration, Russ Vought, are playing right now, all the things that they're doing that I would say are illegal and unconstitutional. We wanted some assurance that if we came to an agreement on health care, that would actually be a deal that the administration would stick to. That's all we're asking for. And he wouldn't even negotiate. He wouldn't have one serious meeting. I'm telling you, as an appropriator who's supposed to be on one of the conference committees that we're supposed to have a bipartisan negotiation, none of it is happening. And Mike Johnson is trying to spin it, but he's in charge. Donald Trump said in 2013, during the shutdown back then, the president of the United States needs to bring the people in the room and make a deal. And now what is he doing instead? Donald Trump is tweeting out ridiculous things, saying ridiculous things, threats, intimidation, no leadership whatsoever. And it's just a sad state of affairs, Major.
Congressman Mike Levin, Democrat from California, specifically northern San Diego County. I appreciate the time, sir, very much. Thank you.